My daughter stole $50,000 from me. I discovered it one quiet afternoon when I logged into my bank account, expecting to see the savings I had worked years to build. Instead, my stomach dropped as the screen showed an almost empty balance. $50,000 gone. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. I thought it had to be a mistake, maybe fraud, maybe a bank error. But when I dug into the transaction history, the truth was right there in front of me. The withdrawals were linked to my daughter Maya. My own child had taken everything. That money wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was years of sweat, skipped meals, double shifts, and endless sacrifice. It was the dream I had protected for Maya's future. Her college, her stability, maybe even her first home one day. Every dollar in that account had a story behind it, and every sacrifice was made with her in mind. To see it vanish at the hands of the very person I saved it for felt like someone had cut open my chest. I stared at the screen for hours, my heart pounding, refusing to believe what my eyes showed me. How could Maya do this? She knew how hard I had worked. She had seen me come home late at night, exhausted, sometimes with tears in my eyes, but always smiling for her. She knew I had chosen her happiness over my own again and again. And now, that evening when she walked through the door, everything looked the same on the outside. She put her bag down, greeted me with a soft "Hi, Mama," and went about as if nothing had happened. I studied her carefully, searching for guilt, for hesitation, for anything that would explain how she could carry such a secret so casually. But her face looked calm, her voice steady. I wanted to shout at her right then, to hold up the bank receipts and demand, "Why? Why did you take the money?" But the words caught in my throat. My love for her battled with my anger. A parent's heart doesn't break cleanly, it tears in pieces, with hope still clinging even when trust is gone. At dinner, she noticed my silence. "Are you okay?" she asked, her eyes curious but not alarmed. I forced a small smile, just tired. But inside, my thoughts were a storm. Was she lying to me every day while she drained my account? Did she plan it carefully, or did she just take without thinking? And most painfully, did she not trust me enough to come to me if she needed help? Later that night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen staring at the cold food I hadn't eaten. My hands shook as I held the printed statements from the bank. The withdrawals were spread over weeks. She had been doing this for a while. I felt sick thinking about it. How many nights had she come home smiling, knowing she had just stolen from me? Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her as a little girl, running into my arms, laughing with innocence. And then I saw her now grown, but standing on the other side of a wall I hadn't even realized was there. Somewhere along the way, something had changed in her, something strong enough to make her betray the person who had always been in her corner. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. Maybe someone tricked her. Maybe she was being blackmailed. Maybe she made a mistake and couldn't fix it. Anything was easier to believe than the thought that she chose to take the money willingly. But deep inside, a painful truth pressed harder with every passing minute. Maya had done this for a reason, and sooner or later I would have to face it. That night, for the first time, I felt like a stranger was living in my own house. The next morning, I couldn't hold it in any longer. My eyes were red from a sleepless night, my hands still trembling from staring at those bank slips over and over. Maya came into the kitchen rubbing her eyes, looking fresh and innocent, and for a moment I almost backed down, almost convinced myself to wait one more day. But the weight inside me was too heavy. I pushed the papers across the table and said in a voice that cracked more than I wanted, "What is this, Maya?" She froze. At first she just blinked, as if the numbers on the page didn't make sense to her. Then her face changed. She didn't look shocked. She didn't even look surprised. She just went pale and quiet, and in that silence I knew the truth even before she opened her mouth.
"Mama, I can explain," she whispered, her voice shaky. "Explain?"
I snapped, louder than I meant to. "You took $50,000 from me. Do you even know what that money was for? Do you understand what you've done?" I could feel my chest tighten as I spoke, my anger spilling out but mixed with pain so deep it made my throat burn. She started to cry, covering her face with her hands, and for a moment I thought she was going to say she was sorry, that it was a mistake. But when she finally spoke, her words cut even deeper. "I gave it to him," she said softly. "My boyfriend. He needed it. He was in trouble." I felt like the floor had fallen out beneath me. I gripped the edge of the table just to steady myself. "You gave him my life savings? The money I worked my whole life for? Maya, are you out of your mind?" She shook her head quickly, tears running down her cheeks. "He promised he'd give it back. He said he just needed help." "Mama, I love him. I couldn't let him suffer." The word love hit me like a slap. I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Love?" I spat out bitterly. "Love is not stealing from your own family. Love is not throwing away your future for a boy who whispers sweet words. Do you even know what you've done to me? To us?" She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. I couldn't bear her touch in that moment. My mind was racing with memories of her childhood, all the times I had put her needs above mine, the endless sacrifices I made so she would never know the kind of hunger or fear I had grown up with. And now she stood in front of me telling me she had taken it all for a boy. "He needed me, Mama?" she cried, her voice breaking. "You don't understand him? He's not like what you think. He loves me. He just made mistakes." I slammed my hand on the table so hard the dishes rattled. "And what about me, Maya? Did you think about me at all? Did you think about the years I spent saving that money? Did you think about the nights I worked 2 jobs so you could sleep comfortably? Did you think about what would happen to me if that money disappeared? No, you didn't. You thought only about him." My voice cracked on the last word and tears finally spilled from my eyes. I hated crying in front of her, but I couldn't stop. The hurt was too big. She cried too, standing there helpless, whispering, "I'm sorry, Mama, I'm sorry," over and over, but it felt empty. Sorry doesn't bring back $50,000. Sorry doesn't erase betrayal. Sorry doesn't heal a wound this deep. I stood up and turned away, unable to look at her anymore. My whole body was shaking. "Go to your room," I said coldly. She hesitated, but when she saw the look on my face, she obeyed, slipping away quietly, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the sound of my own broken breathing. I sank into the chair, the papers still spread in front of me, and buried my face in my hands. The house felt different now, heavier, colder. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about trust, the bond between mother and daughter, a bond I thought nothing could ever break. But it was broken now, cracked wide open, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. I had seen him only once before, Maya's boyfriend, and even then something about him unsettled me. He was polite enough on the surface, with a practiced smile and a way of speaking that sounded smooth but hollow, as if every word had been rehearsed. When he came to our home that day months ago, Maya had introduced him with glowing eyes, the kind of look a girl gives when she's too deep in love to notice the cracks in the picture. He shook my hand, called me ma'am, and complimented the house, but his eyes wandered in ways I didn't like, too sharp, too calculating, like he was studying everything he saw. I had pushed the thought aside then, telling myself not to judge too quickly, but after learning he was the one behind the missing money, that memory came back clearer than ever, and my instinct screamed that I had been right all along. After the confrontation with Maya, I couldn't rest. The betrayal kept me awake, but so did the question, who was this boy that held such power over my daughter? What kind of person could convince her to hand over $50,000 without hesitation? I needed answers, and I wasn't going to wait for them to fall into my lap. The next day, while Maya was at work, I searched her room, something I had never done before. Guilt pricked at me, but the need to know was stronger. I found little things, notes scribbled with his name, photos of them together, text messages saved where he called her his forever, and promised to take care of her one day. But among those sweet words were requests, always about money. "I'm short this month, baby. Can you help me out just this once? I swear I'll pay you back." The pattern was clear, and with each message my heart grew heavier. This wasn't love. This was using, and my daughter, blinded by her feelings, couldn't see the difference. When she came home that evening, I asked to meet him. She looked nervous, biting her lip, but she agreed after a long pause. "He's not what you think, Mama," she said softly, almost pleading. "If you just talk to him, you'll see." But I had already seen enough. A week later, he came over again. He walked in with the same smooth smile, holding flowers as if that simple gesture could erase everything. Maya clung to his arm, looking at me like she was begging for approval. I stayed calm, though my heart thudded with anger. We sat at the table and I looked him straight in the eye. "Did you take my money?" He shifted slightly in his seat, the smile faltering for the first time. "Ma'am, I think there's a misunderstanding," he began, his tone slick. Maya helped me when I was in a tough spot. She wanted to. It wasn't like she was forced. $50,000 is not a favor. I cut him off sharply. That was my life savings, money for her future, money I bled for, and you took it. His jaw tightened, but he tried to recover with a shrug. "I'll pay it back. I just need some time. Things are complicated right now." His words were empty, like smoke in the air, and I knew even as he said them that the money would never return. Maya sat beside him, her hand on his, whispering, "See, Mama, he's not bad, he just needs help." The way she looked at him broke my heart all over again. She was ready to defend him against me, her own mother, the person who had raised her alone and sacrificed everything for her. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to beg her to wake up from the dream she was trapped in. But I stayed still, my voice cold as I said, "You may have fooled her, but you will not fool me. Leave this house. Don't come back." For a moment he stared at me, his smile completely gone, his eyes flashing with something darker, anger, maybe arrogance. But then he stood up slowly, muttering, "Fine, but you'll see, she'll choose me anyway." And with that, he walked out, leaving the smell of his cologne and the wreckage of my daughter's loyalty behind. Maya burst into tears, accusing me of ruining everything, of not giving him a chance. She ran to her room, slamming the door, leaving me in the silence of a home that no longer felt like mine. I sank into the chair, exhausted, wondering how love could twist so cruelly, how it could blind someone so completely that they would give away everything for someone who only saw them as a means to an end. That night, I realized the fight was no longer about the money. It was about my daughter's soul, about pulling her back from a trap she couldn't see she was in. And I wasn't sure I was strong enough to win. After that day, nothing in the house felt the same. Even though the walls stood where they always had and the furniture hadn't moved an inch, it felt like the ground beneath us had shifted. Maya and I lived under the same roof, but it was as if we were worlds apart. She kept to herself, staying in her room for long stretches, coming out only when necessary, and even then her eyes avoided mine. When she did speak, her voice carried an edge, like I was the enemy instead of the mother who had raised her. The air between us was thick with unspoken words, a constant reminder of the broken bond we both refused to face directly. For me, it wasn't only about the money anymore, though that loss was crushing enough. It was the betrayal that echoed louder than anything else. Every time I looked at her, I remembered the little girl who once sat in my lap, who once trusted me with all her secrets, who once clung to my hand at the slightest fear. Now she was a stranger, guarded, secretive, and willing to stand against me for a boy who had done nothing but drain her. Nights were the hardest. I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, the silence pressing down heavy, wondering where I went wrong. Did I not teach her enough about the value of money? Did I fail to warn her about people who use love as a mask? Or was I simply blind to how deeply she had fallen until it was too late? The questions circled endlessly, each one stabbing me with guilt and sadness. Sometimes I would hear her crying in her room late at night. The sound tore at me, but I couldn't bring myself to go to her, not after everything. A wall had grown between us, and I didn't know how to climb it anymore. I longed to hold her, to tell her that I still loved her despite the pain, but the anger inside me wouldn't let me move. I thought of the money often, not just as dollars lost, but as the life I had imagined for her slipping away. That $50,000 could have carried her into a secure future. Now it was gone, handed to a boy who had vanished from our lives the moment I confronted him. He hadn't called, hadn't returned, hadn't shown his face again. He took what he wanted and left, just as I had feared. And yet Maya still defended him, still clung to the idea that he loved her, still waited for him like a sailor waiting for a ship that would never return. Watching her in that state was almost worse than losing the money. My daughter, smart and capable, had been reduced to someone who couldn't see the truth even when it was right in front of her. The betrayal wasn't just hers, it was his too, and she was too blind to admit it. One evening I tried to reach out. I sat beside her at the dinner table, forcing myself to speak gently. "Maya," I said softly, "do you see what he's done? He took the money and he left you. This isn't love, my child. Love doesn't destroy families. Love doesn't ask you to betray the people who would die for you." She stared at her plate, silent, tears falling one by one, but she said nothing. The silence was worse than shouting. It felt like I was speaking into a void, and the daughter I once knew was gone somewhere I couldn't follow. From that day, I stopped trying to reason with her. I still cooked, still washed clothes, still kept the house going as usual, but inside I felt like a machine, just moving through the motions. The warmth between us was gone. Every time I saw her, my chest tightened with a mix of love and anger, pride and disappointment. I still loved her with everything in me. But trust was a fragile thing, and once broken, it never came back the same. Friends and relatives noticed the change too. They asked why Maya looked so tired, why I seemed so distracted. I never told them the truth. I couldn't bear the shame of saying aloud that my own daughter had betrayed me, that she had given away our future for a boy who never deserved her. So I smiled, I lied, and I carried the weight in silence. Inside, the wound grew deeper. I knew life would go on, but nothing would ever be the same. The trust we once shared had shattered, and in its place was a silence too heavy for words. Time has a way of softening some wounds, but not all. Weeks turned into months after the money was gone, and life in our home became a slow routine of silence and distance. Maya eventually stopped waiting for his calls, stopped checking her phone every minute, and though she never admitted it, I knew the truth had finally reached her. He was not coming back. At first, she was angry at me, blaming me for driving him away, for not giving him a chance. But as the weeks stretched on and his name stopped appearing on her screen, the anger gave way to quiet sadness. I would catch her staring out the window at night, eyes red, lips trembling as if she were trying not to cry. I wanted to reach out to her to say, "I told you so," but the words caught in my throat because I knew they would only build the wall higher. What she needed wasn't scolding. What she needed was time to face the truth on her own. The money never returned. Deep down, I had known it wouldn't, but part of me had clung to hope, the same way she had clung to him. $50,000, my years of saving, sacrificing, skipping things I wanted so she could have more, was gone, and there was nothing I could do to change it. Some nights I lay awake doing the math in my head, how many extra shifts at work, how many years of careful budgeting it had taken to build that fund. I thought that all of it had slipped through my fingers and a single mistake burned like fire inside me. Yet when I looked at Maya, sitting at the table with her head lowered, her shoulders slumped, I realized the money was not the only thing lost. Trust had vanished too, and that wound cut deeper than any number in a bank account. Slowly, she began to talk again. Little things at first, asking about groceries, mentioning her day at work, small attempts to rebuild what had been broken. I listened, I responded. But there was always a pause, a hesitation in my heart. I still loved her fiercely. She was my daughter, my blood. But the innocence of our bond was gone. No matter how many times I reminded myself she was young, that she had been blinded by love, a part of me couldn't forget that she had chosen him over me, that she had taken from me what I could never fully recover. Eventually, she confessed. One evening, while washing dishes beside me, she whispered, "Mama, I'm sorry." Her voice cracked, her eyes filled, and she set the plate down to cover her face with her hands. "I thought he loved me. I thought I was helping him. I didn't mean to hurt you." The sound of her crying was raw and childlike, and for a moment it took me back to when she was little, when she scraped her knee and came running into my arms. I wanted to hold her, to tell her everything was fine, but the truth stood between us like a wall. I put my hand on her shoulder instead and said softly, "I know, Maya, I know." That was all. We never spoke of the money again. Life went on, bills to pay, meals to cook, work to attend. People outside never knew what had happened inside our home. To them, we were just another family moving forward like everyone else. But inside me, the scar remained. Sometimes I would look at her and feel proud of the woman she was becoming, and then in the same breath, feel the sting of what she had done. Trust is fragile. You can forgive, but you cannot forget. Over time, our relationship improved in small ways. We laughed occasionally, shared meals, and even talked about her plans for the future. Yet no matter how close we seemed, I knew there was always going to be a space between us that could not be filled, a reminder of betrayal and heartbreak that had changed both of us forever. In the end, the biggest lesson wasn't hers alone. I learned too, that even the people you love the most can hurt you in ways you never expect, and that sometimes protecting them means letting them learn the hardest lessons on their own. The money was gone, the boyfriend was gone, but the scar remained, woven into the fabric of our family story, something neither of us could erase.